So in the last show we were talking about, when we were watching people's brains try to change their brains. This is what most people do. We actually try to use our ego to change our ego. We try to use the program to change the program. And it's like we're fighting against ourselves. And if you see a brain scan of somebody do that, their brain actually goes more into hypercoherence, more into conscious beta, high beta thinking. In other words,
monkey brain.
They're actually getting where they're analyzing themselves within their emotions that they've memorized, and basically they're analyzing or thinking in the past, and it drives their brain further out of balance. So when I saw this, it was a classic moment for me because I couldn't take my eyes off it. I kept thinking about it and how we've all tried to do this. And so in our work, what we teach people how to do is, and when the brain's doing that, you get very narrow focused, you get very object focused, you obsess about something, a problem, a thing, you loop. And it causes our awareness to become very, very, what's called convergent. And what the research has shown, both in our work and other work, is that when you teach people how to become aware of the space around them in space, then all of a sudden the brain starts to get more organized. When the brain moves into that hypercoherent state, different compartments of the brain that are normally talking to each other no longer communicate. So good coherence means there's a good rhythm.
Yes.
There's rhythm, there's synchrony, there's order, there's a pulse, there's a beat. Hypercoherence means it's too fast and it's brain's working, it's hyper incoherent, we should say.
That's right. Yeah.
So in that state of hyper incoherence, when the stress chemicals are running, when you're under stress and I'm under stress, we become very selfish. That's what those hormones do. We think that we're our bodies, we think that we're our identity identifying with the environment, and we think we're living in linear time. That's what those hormones do. If the zebra's being chased by the lion, she's saying, I gotta take care of my body, I gotta put my awareness on it. Where in my environment am I gonna go and how much time do I have to get there? So think. The majority of people that live their life spend their life in these limited, altered states, which psychology calls normal states of consciousness. They're altered states. So then, just like you and I were living in that selfish state, endorsing the ego to become selfish, self-indulgent, self-important, self-centered, self-aggrandizing, self-absorbed. The brain does the exact same thing. The neurons in the brain that should be communicating in networks across vast landscapes. All of a sudden they're saying there's an emergency, so I'm going to close down and my neighborhood's not going to talk to this neighborhood. This community is not going to talk to this community. This whole state or region is not going to talk to that region. The brain starts to become very subdivided, right? So that's a very incoherent state, and it sends a very incoherent signal down the central nervous system, which creates a very incoherent message to the immune system, to the digestive system, to the cardiovascular system. It's a group of people playing drums that have no rhythm, and the body really begins to suffer the effects because the central nervous system controls and coordinates all other systems. So then, as it sends a signal to the immune system saying, I don't know how to make white blood cells with that signal. I don't know how to keep the timing between my digestion working. I don't know how to keep my heart in balance with the brain. And so the body begins to suffer. So when people begin to put their awareness and open or cause a divergent focus instead of a convergent focus, that opening of attention, what people don't realize is this is who you really are, right?
Yes.
So this field around your body is who you really are. When you're functioning by the hormones of stress, you're more particle and less energy. You're more matter and less wave. That's the function of what those hormones do. We become materialists, right? And we define reality with our senses. So energy contracts. So then when you begin to put your awareness on the space around your body in space, that field around your body is consciousness. That's who we really are. The moment you put your awareness on that consciousness, on that space, something amazing happens. The brain starts getting very orderly, and you're no longer using the brain to try to change the brain. You're no longer using the ego to try to change the brain, or the ego, or you're not using the program to try to change the program. You're using consciousness to change the program, the brain, and the ego, because this is you. And so some people would say, well, that's not me, I can't feel that. And I'd say, well, you don't feel your nose unless you put your awareness on it. You don't feel your little toe unless you become aware of it, right? So if you don't put your awareness on this field, wherever you put your attention or wherever you put your awareness is where energy follows. Energy follows awareness. So the moment you start putting your awareness and your attention on this sphere around you, now you're beginning to introduce yourself to who you are. You're starting to get acquainted with the true self. And when we study that on the scans, we saw the brain all of a sudden having dominion over the program, having ability to change the brain. Well, the first thing that happens is that you start seeing the analytical thinking neocortex starting to settle down. So now you're no longer analyzing. And so the moment you're no longer analyzing, your brain waves move from, of course, beta to alpha. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're functioning by the hormones of stress, you believe that the outer world is more real than the inner world. That's the seduction. In other words, when the brain is in a high arousal state, we're functioning and determining reality with our senses. So because we're functioning by our senses, we're focusing on the particle of the atom instead of the wave of possibility, right? Mm-hmm. So then everything collapses into the mm-hmm. known. So when you shift your awareness to the space around you in space, it means you can't think. And when you sense the space around you, you're not thinking, you're sensing. And what happens is the thinking neocortex tends to slow down and the brain waves tend to get slower. You start producing what's called alpha brain waves. And in alpha, alpha is the imaginary world. It's where the inner world starts becoming more real than the outer world. And the way we learn is we learn information and then we're in beta, we're in low levels of beta. We're in beta right now, we're relaxed. If I said to you, hey, listen, you can't eat lunch unless you take a test that I have, it's 75 questions, and then we can eat lunch.
That takes you into high beta.
You would go into mid beta. You'd be like, I better perk up and listen to what he says. But if you're freaked out, neurotic, emotional, insecure, frustrated, guilty, judgmental, you're going into high range beta. And now, no new information can enter into the nervous system that isn't equal to the emotion. In other words, the brain never has a chance to consolidate knowledge because it's not a time to learn. It's a time to run. So there's a tiger around the corner. It's time for emergency, right? When we begin to teach people how to break that addiction and slow the body back down again, and their brain is moving from beta down the steps, and they're going inward, that alpha pattern then is when you consolidate new circuits in your brain. So like I know when I'm lecturing that people are getting information because I'll develop a concept or an idea, and as I develop the concept or an idea, they'll go from the outer world listening to me to the inner world of actually consolidating the knowledge. They'll pause and the brain will move into alpha. When it happens, the brain stores it in its circuitry. So when we learn, we move into alpha. So if you're in high beta, you never, ever get any new information in there. So in alpha, the imaginary world, the inner world becomes more real. And what we noticed on our scans is that the beta patterns tend to slow down, and we start to get these really broad, healthy alpha patterns. And the person now is creating coherent, orderly, rhythmic patterns, and different compartments of the brain are shaking hands. Different areas of the brain, the left side's talking to the right side, the front is talking to the back. All of a sudden we're getting this psychic union going on, and different neighborhoods are saying, she's out of the way. Every time I leave my body, the first thing my body always says is, thank God he's out of the way. And I see my body laughing while I'm standing there because it's relieved that the operators had a chance to heal, you know.